Uh, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Welcome to the 10th episode of the Muslim Cowboy podcast. And whether it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, or any of our other shows, we want to welcome you. We want to thank everybody who's going to be here and all those who are going to watch after the show. Today, as some of you are aware, as we've put out some of the notifications here recently, is that we are going to have on one of the legends, one of the great du'at of our time right now, alhamdulillah, on the show, someone who I've interviewed on Clubhouse, someone who I really have benefited a lot from. He is somebody who I would consider a mentor, though I wish I could pick his brain even more. But hopefully, inshallah, that's what we're going to be doing today, guys. And so without further ado, this man needs no introduction. He's been a Muslim for well over a couple decades, and he has been giving everything that he has back into this dawah, back into bringing the kalima, the word of the Creator, the Almighty, to the highest, to bring light where there was darkness, and to help spread this message of peace and of beauty of Islam. And without further ado, I want to welcome our Sheikh, our brother, our teacher, Sheikh Abdur Raheem Green. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, bro. How you doing?
Good, alhamdulillah. How are you doing?
I'm good, bro. Alhamdulillah. Everything's good, man. MashaAllah, subhanakallah.
Are you back in the UK?
I am, bro. I was only out briefly. So yeah, that's why I spend most of my time now here in the US of A. I mean, here in the UK.
MashaAllah.
In the UK, bro.
You're a secret American, huh?
Well,
holding out on us.
I don't know. I haven't had the chance to spend enough time there to get converted yet, but who knows?
I don't know if you're missing too much, but I mean, I haven't been to the UK, so I don't know. I mean, I love the US, but bismillah. I guess the UK Muslims, they have their things to say about the US Muslims, and the US Muslims have stuff to say about the UK Muslims.
That's true.
Yeah. May Allah unite us and allow us to do this work together and to be.
I mean, bro.
تعاونوا على البر والتقوى, right? So
I mean, definitely, yeah, we should.
How's everything been? How's the work? I mean, I know y'all are still plugging and chugging.
Right. Obviously, the World Cup, the Football World Cup, which is actually a genuine World Cup, not like in America. When you call things a World Series, the only people who play it are the people in the US of A. Which says enough about you guys. No, this is a real World Cup where you have people competing from all over the actual world. So it's taking place in Qatar now, right? Amid lots of controversy because of their Islamic-based objection to homosexuality and displaying of, well, I mean, to be honest, any sort of outward display of sexual conduct is just not allowed, right? That's quite normal in most Muslim countries where they still have a sort of degree of modesty and stuff like that. But anyway, that apart, so we're gearing up in IERA for not confronting LGBTQ whatever plus stuff, because we're not really fundamentally about that. At IERA, we just want to invite people to Islam, and things like your sexuality or whatever. I mean, that's pretty much secondary or tertiary, or like personally, I think that it's all a bit of a sideshow in comparison to the most important thing. Do we know Allah or not? And I think that like often we approach these things from the wrong angle. We get hung up on certain issues and certain points, and we forget the big picture. That if a person like in my encounters that I've had, say for example with the LGBT guys, I come from the angle of trying to explain where are we coming from, because we have a different, what I realize is we have a different worldview. We have a different way of looking at the world. And I said just come on board for a second and just try to understand our perspective, right? Because we have a different perspective. We don't, the whole issue of who you have sex with is like, it's not, it's not something we look at as really being like really important in life. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like people make it such a big thing, right? And that's sort of, I guess, a bit confusing, because I guess from a Muslim's point of view, it's, I mean, it's not that it's not important, but it's all pales into significance compared to the really important things of understanding that you've got to connect with your creator. The purpose of life is to know God and to worship God, and that actually life is a struggle against your desires, and that's what it is. Life is all literally a struggle against your desires, right? So the Islamic way of life is trying to build a system that can help you struggle against your desires. That's a whole different way of looking at the world and what life is about. So anyway, at IERA, we're gearing up for this World Cup because it's a good opportunity, to invite people to Islam, and it's a good platform from which to get people enthused in the work of dawah. And it's great to see, mashallah. I mean, this is, I would love to say that we had something to do with it, but I don't think we did. But mashallah, the Qataris have taken this matter of dawah quite seriously. You can see that they made a real effort, at the very least, to have some form of information there for people to know something about what Islam is about. And that's really important, and that's really great. And we'd love to say that we might have had something to do with that. I don't know if we have. I just think that's just how they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of Muslims are, bro. I think a lot of Muslims, that's how they are. They know that dawah is important. They want to invite people who are not Muslim to Islam, especially Muslims who love their religion. Like, that's just normal, right? When you love something, you want to share it with everybody, right?
For sure.
Yeah. That's normal. When you love something, you want everyone. Well, I mean, I think most decent human beings want that, right? When you love something, you want to share it with everyone, and you want everyone else to experience the wonderful feelings that you're experiencing, right?
Absolutely.
And so that, I think that's a deep thing within Muslims, because that's a strong teaching in Islam, to love for others what you love for yourself, right? We love for all humanity what we love for ourselves. And what do we love for ourselves the most is our beautiful religion. So like, Muslims really understand, I think they understand in a deep way, that, they want to share Islam. But I think, what happens is they just don't know where to start. That's my experience, bro. My experience is people like, okay, where do I go from here? Right. I'd love to tell my friends and these people and whoever, these strangers, about Islam, but I just don't know.
So on that note, like there's a lot of people who are asking that right now.
Yeah.
I'll let you do your plug. I'll plug my us
Yeah.
as well in. So for all of those who really don't know the first step to even take, maybe you don't have enough confidence. Maybe you're having issues with, I don't feel like I have enough knowledge. Maybe you do have some prerequisites, and or maybe you just started practicing yourself the last couple of years, and you really want to share this with people. Sheikh, tell them a little few things that they can start doing to at least beginning to prepare themselves so that they can go out and spread this message.
Yeah, I think, obviously we both are involved in organizations, amazing organizations. You're involved in Messengers of Peace, right? And I'm involved in IERA. So back in the days when we were just starting, and we had pretty much started almost at the same time. Yeah. So there's a big crossover between actually what we're both doing, right? But we've always focused more on being on the street, doing the work on the ground. That's what we're all about, really. And that's why we, when we say the work, I mean the work of inviting people to Islam. Whereas you guys, right, have mostly been concentrating on online stuff,
mostly,
right? So, but either way, the basic principles are pretty much the same. Yeah. So whether you're online or whether you're on the street, the basic principles of how to approach inviting a non-Muslim to Islam are very much the same. And the approach that we've developed, and the approach that we encourage very much, we really honestly encourage everybody, whether you go to the IERA website and you do the the basic course, because it's a very basic course we have on there. Or like if you want to go more in depth, the Messengers of Peace definitely has a much more comprehensive full package than we do. Ours is like very, it's like the basic, what we call the Go Rap, which is like just a system of giving dawah, which basically focuses on, avoiding getting caught up in, questions, right? So like this LGBT thing is classic. I was watching, I think it was the Qatari ambassador or someone, the spokesperson, like he was being asked all of these questions, like, how about this? And like, I noticed that Muslims try to give logical, rational explanations, right? And, they try to, give explanations based upon, I don't know, science or sociology or just, I don't know, whatever, right? But the bottom line is, look, the reason a Muslim does something or doesn't do something is not because there is a scientific reason for it or not to do it. It's because that's what Allah told us, right? We do something because Allah told us to do it. And we don't do something because Allah told us don't do it. And that's the bottom line. Like I always give the example, even if they created, I mean, you and me, bro, before we were Muslim, right? We were pig eaters, right? We used to eat that bacon and that crispy crisp on the, I feel sick talking about it, but I won't lie, right? Like anyone who ate pig knows it's the tastiest, sweetest, most delicate meat, right? It tastes good. Right. And let's say some guys came along and they said, we can genetically produce pig that we can prove it has no diseases, it has no harmful effects. In fact, we found a way to make sure that pig, contains like more vitamins and nutrients than any other meat. Right. And they can prove it scientifically that it's maybe the best thing to eat for you to eat. If you're going to eat meat, it still wouldn't be halal for us.
Absolutely,
right?
Sheikh.
Because it wouldn't be halal. So when brothers go on about, trichinosis and this worm and this, and it's, has this effect and that effect. And, like people try all sorts of stuff, right? Even down to, it's the most flesh like human flesh. I mean, maybe these are the reasons. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Maybe there's something else that we don't even know. Maybe there is a whole spiritual reason we can't even comprehend. It doesn't even matter. The bottom line is Allah has said it's haram. Right. And so our methodology of giving dawah is to just go back to those principles, right? And to understand that, listen, everything is founded for us as Muslims. It's all founded on our belief that the universe has a creator, and that this creator is one and unique and only is the one worthy of worship. And that this creator has given us guidance. He's sent prophets, he's sent messengers, and he's given us guidance to teach us how to live. No, now the point being is that surely, right, if you acknowledge that there is a God, and if you know that this creator of the entire universe has sent guidance and given us guidance from his perfect knowledge, what can a logical, rational human being do except follow that guidance? You have no choice. If you are in the remotest sense, have any level of intelligence, you would have to, right? And that's basically the premise of our system of dawah, is showing, instead of arguing about all of these things, why don't you just show them that the Quran is from God? Show them that Muhammad is the prophet of God. If you can show a person and prove to them, or at least give them really, really good reasons to believe that the Quran is from Allah and Muhammad is the messenger, that's it. Inshallah, they're going to accept it. And once they accept that, they'll accept everything. They'll accept everything Islam says about whether it's LGBT, whether it's about pork, whether it's about wine, whether it's about whatever, right? Because it's from God and he knows better than we know ourselves. That's the logic and the reasoning behind our system of dawah that we call Go Rap. Yeah.
Even one of the very, very virulent and vile Christian, I don't want to even mention his name because I don't want to give him the time of day, but he's very famous, one of the most famous, right?
Yeah.
He even himself said, look, I'll accept the marriage to Aisha. I'll accept anything from Islam if I accept that the Quran is from God and that the Prophet Muhammad is actually a prophet. He's like, I don't have any problem accepting any of that stuff. But he's like, I think that's you made a point for like the foundational issue that we need to understand, right? Because when we get caught up in these furu'i, which means like these auxiliary or secondary, tertiary issues, then we end up wasting a lot of time. You agree?
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. And it's interesting because vice versa, I would say the same thing. Like, the thing that the thing that I've always respected about Christian fundamentalists, or, those born again guys, those evangelicals, right, is that unlike maybe Catholics and, a lot of modern Christian theologians, you see, the thing is that there, at least there is a logical consistency to their basic foundational ideas. And when I say, I don't mean about the Trinity, because that just doesn't make sense at all. And that's where I think, for me, the whole of Christianity falls on its face, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that goes back to the same thing, right? If the Bible is not the word of God, right, then what use is it? If you can say, well, some bits are from God and some are not. Now, unless you have a very, very clear criterion that you can use to distinguish which bits are from God and which are not, you're just going to end up picking and choosing. Whatever you fancy, you're going to choose, oh, yeah, that's from God. And whatever you don't fancy, you're going to just say, oh, well, that's not from God. And, I've heard this. Maybe you've heard it. Maybe you've heard, these liberal Christian, lesbian. I heard some, female lesbian pastor, right? Making fun of the passages in the Bible about Sodom and Gomorrah and, and Lot and all that, literally laughing and making fun and mocking it.
And still considers herself a Christian,
And still considers herself to be a Christian, right? But the problem is that, okay, that's fine. You can say, well, I don't believe this bit's from God. But what's your criterion? I mean, it just simply can't be, well, because it doesn't agree with what I fancy or what I like, or, like, do you have some actual objective criterion that you can use? And it doesn't mean, whatever the status quo is today and whatever we happen to believe in the West today. Yeah, that's, whatever we're on today, that's goes, right? That's not a criterion, right? Because the whole point of having a book that's from God, the whole point of God sending us revelation, is that we have some concrete principles of morality that don't change. They don't change from hour to hour, minute to minute, day to day. They are immutable. They are eternal. They are constant, permanent fixtures in terms of our morals and our manners and our behavior and the systems through which and by which we should live, right? So, like, at least from the point of view of those Christian, I don't know what you call them, but, those Christian evangelicals or whatever, right? Again, I respect that position. At least there's consistency there. Obviously, I don't think that a thinking, reasonable person could really, stay with that position for long, because clearly the Bible, is a book that some bits of it, like, we have a criterion, right? We have a criterion to judge the Bible by, which is the Quran. That is actually one of the reasons why Allah revealed the Quran, is to sort out what's true and what's false from the previous scriptures. As one of its names is Al-Furqan. Al-Furqan means the criterion, right? That sorts out, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable from what was before. So that is one of the benefits of the Quran being revealed. But, otherwise, I think, an honest, objective look at the Bible, and, no one's really going to be able to accept that as being a book in its totality that is from God. But you just can't pick and choose based upon your whims and your fancies and, my sexual orientation at this particular century, decade, whatever, right? That's not an objective criterion, right? So I think, from that perspective, we share a sort of common thread in that respect. So, I mean, it's good. It's good that at least they've drawn the lines through which we can have a conversation, and that is a line through which you can have a proper conversation. It's really interesting, bro, in the years and years of giving dawah, right, to all sorts of ages of people, right, from little kids, primary school kids, all the way through to old age pensioners. For 5 years I worked in the London Central Mosque. That was an amazing experience. We had like 10,000 visitors there a year. Wow. And I got to speak to nearly all of them, right? It's amazing how few people know how to ask the right question. Because in my mind, there's only a couple of really, really good questions, right? I mean, and ultimately, the only really, really good question is, how do we know what you've got is from God? I mean, that's it. Like, why are we arguing about anything else, right? Just apply your logic and you'll realize, okay, if there is a God and God has sent revelation, we should follow that revelation. So how am I going to know? How am I going to know your book is from God as opposed to this one or that one? How do I know that your religion is true as opposed to this one or that one? How do I know your religion is authentic as opposed to this one or that one? These are really, really good, worthwhile questions, right?
Yeah.
So the whole discussion around authenticity, the whole discussion about how do we know something is from God, these are good questions. These are the right questions. These are the right discussions to have. So yeah, I think this is what our Dawah is based upon. And I think the nice thing about it is it's actually not confrontational, because you don't necessarily need to be saying a lot of negative things about another person's religion. And we, in our system, we strongly discourage using the Bible. I have a module, like, again, you can find it online on the IERA website. And I don't know about you guys, because this is quite a new thing. I have a separate module on, how to give dawah to Christians. And it's basically, showing how Go Rap works really, really well with Christians. But I talk a lot about why I don't think you should use the Bible and why I don't think you should go down that line. Because I have some reasons. I just don't think it's very constructive to be. I think it's a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted energy. Yeah, I mean, you can get there. I'm not trying to say it any way, shape, or form, bro, that this Go Rap method is the only way to give dawah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely not. It's interesting. Like, I went to Malawi recently, and one of our outreach specialists there, despite me really, really, really trying to push these guys to, use the Go Rap method, they still do their own thing, right? So I went along, and this guy was this very good guy, he's doing his own thing, and I have to say his approach is really good. I really liked his approach, but it was, again, quite strongly biblical based, but it's quite clever what he did. Now, I mean, again, you have to understand, this is something we always teach as well. Like, every situation is different. The people in Africa, what they need, it's not like the people in USA. I mean, even sure, in different parts of the USA, I'm sure even in different parts of Texas, right? You have to talk, you have to talk to people differently, right? And different approaches will work. But in what he was doing it's really beautiful, bro. And then you probably remember this from the Ahmed Didat tapes, right? So he would go through and he would give references about how the prophets prayed, right? So he would show from the Bible that the prophets made wudu, they made ablutions, right?
Wow.
And they bowed and they prostrated. Yeah. So he would show all these evidences that the prophets prayed to God, only God, right? By bowing and prostrating and washing themselves. And then he will ask them, how do you pray in the church? When you pray in the church, how do you pray? Right. And then, he would sing this song with them that they all sang in the church, like whatever, right? It's really clever. He's saying, you do this, don't you? And he said, but wait a minute, he was always asking them, should we worship God any way we want, or should we worship God the way the prophets worship God? And they would say, we should worship God the way the prophets worship God, right? So he'll ask them, who prays like those prophets? Who washes themselves before they pray? Who bows when they pray? Who prostrates when they pray? Who gets circumcised, right? Who doesn't drink alcohol? Who? So he's just mentioning all this stuff that the prophets did. And what can they say? And the beautiful thing I like about it is, if these guys ever think of going back to the church, every time they see everyone singing and clapping and dancing, they'll be thinking, that's not how Abraham prayed. That's not how Moses prayed. That's not how Jesus prayed.
Yeah.
It's really good. So I'm not going to try and change that guy's way of giving dawah, right? But I did, so I had an opportunity in that same trip that, you know, to, because I listened to him and I thought that's really good. But so what I did is, you know, he had some good examples. So what I did is I actually then took the Go rap, right? And I was sort of showing him in my talk how you can do a lot of the same stuff, right? You can still get people to think in, you know, but using Go rap. So I sort of, you know, adopted it to what I thought was the, you know, the African environment. It was like, again, you know, the response was really, really good. So I like I said, I'm not, you know, like I'm a great believer in do what works, as long as it's obviously, as long as it's not haram, right? As long as you're not doing something that is and duplicitous. I don't think we should be deceiving anybody, right? I'm a big believer in being very, very honest and forthright. And, you know, our job is not to make people Muslim, right? At the end of the day, we can't convert people. Yeah, we can just, all we can do is convey the message. We can, you know, we can invite them, you know, with the best way, but we can't make anyone Muslim, right, bro?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. So what this is kind of maybe hopefully not too vague of a question, but what does the Dawah look like in 2022, do you think, compared to 5-10 years ago?
I don't know, bro. I'd love to see more people doing, you know, like what Qatar does, right? You know, I mean, if Saudi really is gonna move this agenda forward that they're on, you know, that the MBS is on, right? And he's gonna build this city, and you know, like, okay, like, I'm not going to comment on that. I obviously I think there's positives. There are really huge positives, and there are some negatives, right? There's no doubt about that. But I don't want to talk about that. At the end of the day, I think that you know, all of these guys could take a leaf out of Qatar's book, right? I think that I'll be very honest. I think that multiculturalism, it can work. I mean, look, multiculturalism has worked probably, I think it's worked very well in Canada, for example, right? So Canada is a country where they really believe, like really, really believe in their ideology, right, of multiculturalism. Yeah. Like it's a key, you know, when they say strength through diversity, they really mean it, right? Whereas the US of A, I don't know. US is, I don't, you know, it seems a bit strange. It seems that people very quickly retreat into their own silos. You have these ghettoized communities. You know, people don't seem to mix that much. They seem to, you know, and that for me is the big, highly problematic. Even, you know, the state of US Muslims, right? I call it rich. I call them rich ghettos, right? Because my son went there going on about, oh, it's so amazing and this and that. And, you know, the mosque, you should see it. They've all got gyms. They've all got this, and they're all driving nice cars, and they all whatever. And I said, basically, rich ghettos. Because are they giving dawah? No. Right? Do they mix with the people around them? No, not really. They just live in rich ghettos. They're like ghettos, but rich, with nice houses, a nice, beautiful mosque, and a gym, and whatever. Right? Is that how Muslims are supposed to be? Right? Is that really how we're supposed to be? Now, maybe it might work, right? If people come into those places and say, wow, you know, this is how I want my community to be. What are these guys on? All right. It can work. I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't want to be dismissive of everything. I'm not like, you know, and good on everybody who lives a good life and has a nice house and a nice car, and you got a gym for your kids, and you all go to the mosque, and it's beautiful. Alhamdulillah. But I don't think it has longevity. And I think it's problematic, right? I think it's, on the long term, it's problematic, but Allah knows best, right? I'm a big believer that, you know, literally dawah or destruction. You know, you can't live. I agree 100%. You can't just live in a land amongst people and the whole civilization is going downhill, and you think you're going to sort of form a little wall around your community and just live there and everything's going to be hunky-dory. Because the moment you step out of it, you don't even need to step out of it, right? That trouble will come to you. I used to say this to people here. It's like, look, you know, you can't live an isolated life, because look, your kids are going to have to go from the school to the mosque. If you're not doing something about drug abuse, prostitution, right, or bullying, or I don't know, whatever range of things you can think, your kids are going to face those things. You know, don't think because you've memorized Quran and you wear a topi or a hijab, your kids are going to be safe. They're not. It doesn't work like that, right? And that's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave this beautiful example of the boat. You know, the good companion, the bad companion, those who enjoin the right and forbid the wrong. He said his example of these people is like a boat, and it has two decks, the upper deck and the lower deck. And he said the people on the upper deck have water, while the people on the lower deck, they have none. He said, so the people on the lower deck, they're thirsty. Now, if the people on the upper deck don't give water to those people on the lower deck, right? What they start doing, the people on the lower deck, is they're thirsty, so they start digging a hole in the boat because they're thirsty. They want to get water. So if the people on the top don't stop the people on the bottom, what's going to happen? The boat's going to sink. Everyone is going to drown. Everyone's going down, right? And that's the point. If the people on the top, right, and let's say the people on the top here means the Muslims, the people, and the water is the Quran. It's the knowledge of revelation. It's the guidance of life, right? If people don't get that guidance that everybody needs, they are thirsty. They are thirsty for La ilaha illallah, whether they know it or not. People are thirsty because that's why Allah is the nature on which God created every soul. That is the nature of the human being, right? That's our fitrah. That's our nature, to know Allah, to worship Him. And that's why the hearts are empty. When the heart is empty of knowing Allah, they're like dead. But you know, the heart is a vessel that has to be filled. Yeah, just like you're thirsty, you're going to fill it. If you don't fill it with the knowledge, the true knowledge, you're going to fill it with whatever you can, because it has to be filled, right? If you fill it with falsehood, you'll sink. Like, that's it. I'm saying the boat's going to sink, right? Everyone's going to sink. So you can't just sit there on the upper deck enjoying your water while people are, you know, destroying the whole boat. You got to do something. You got to stop them doing that, because we're all going to be destroyed, right? So this is, you know, it seems to me, bro, that this is something so basic, something so important, such a intrinsic part of Islam and what it means to be a Muslim. You know, so I think this is the problem. Well, this is part of the problem I have, you know, with you know, Islam in the USA, right? But you know, multiculturalism, and going back to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and these places and whatever, right? I think that, like, it can work, and I said, like, you can see in Canada it works, but generally the problem with America as well, with the US of A, which is not a problem, maybe it's not even a problem, but you know, I think generally a more successful model is when you have a very strong overriding dominant culture, which to some extent everyone has to give deference to it. And as long as you do that, you're free to operate within certain boundaries. Now, I believe that's the Islamic model, right? The Islamic model tolerates other religions. It tolerates other belief systems. It's very tolerant, actually, right? But within a framework, right? Absolutely. That tolerance has limits. Everyone is, look, to put it quite frankly, everyone is not equal, right? The one who believes is not like the one who disbelieves. The one who is guided with knowledge from God is not like the one who has no knowledge from God. The people of knowledge are not like the scholars, are not like the ignorant ones, are not like the scholars. The blind and the seeing are not alike, right? So I think this is something very, very, very important. And that, you know, it's going to be very important for, you know, countries like Saudi as they move forward, and Qatar and all of these countries, to bear that in mind, right? Is they're going to have to be very, you know, clever and wise, but also very strong about how they, you know, hang on to their key principles that come from the Quran and the Sunnah. And that doesn't mean there's not lots of room for tolerance and you know, freedoms and stuff like that. But, you know, it has to be under that. It's what is the word for it? It's not multiculturalism. It's I can't remember, the word's gone from my mind right now. Anyway, it'll come back to me.
No, it's okay.
I think within that context, bro, I think there's a huge scope for Dawah. So when you're saying what's the future of Dawah, right? Well, I think, you know, there's a big opportunity for countries like the UAE, for Qatar, for Saudi Arabia, you know, to be a real force for transformation. I mean, in a positive way, in terms of people coming to Islam.
MashaAllah.
I do think, you know, because you can, you know, the impact You see, we can send out, you can train how many, I don't know, how many guys do you train, bro? How many try in Messengers of Peace? How many people have you trained, like, since you've been there, for example?
We've gotten through, I mean, each group, probably 30 per group. I don't even know exact numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So say we'll send out a message, a couple hundred will sign up. Out of that, 1/4 actually do it. So maybe 40 per every group actually do it, like go through the modules and finish.
But
A lot of people sign up and they don't end up finishing.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, overall, since you've been going for like what, there's almost the same time as us, like 7 years, or do you know how many? Like,
I can't give you the exact numbers, but I mean, it's been a lot, and most of them have working with us. I mean, so we already have 150 workers, but that's not that's not everybody. We've got a lot of other people who have,
And these guys are, this is their job. They're on the internet there, and lots of people are becoming Muslim. Lots of people are taking Shahada, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, like, this is one way of doing it. Yeah, but to be honest, it's very, I mean, alhamdulillah, it has to be done, right? Absolutely. But what is the impact of something like Qatar? Yeah, the impact that they can have with this World Cup, with literally millions and millions and millions, if not billions, of human beings watching the open ceremony, right? And all those fans coming and sort of having a real living experience, of what that culture, that Islamic dominated culture, is like, right? So the impact of that is way more, is so huge, right? It's like when a celebrity becomes Muslim, right? Like, where that has a huge impact just because of who they are and the reach that they've got, right?
Someone recently, I've actually had a couple of people that have converted with us after they're like, hey, we want to convert. We really like him and we want to convert now.
They will, for sure. Because at least what it will do is, like, and it's not necessarily they do it because they like him, right? Yeah. It's just that the fact that this guy became Muslim, right? And it made us look into Islam, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. And it will. I mean, Islam it does make sense. It's the beautiful thing about it. It makes sense, right? So yeah, I mean, I think the future of Dawah. Allahu alim, bro. Only Allah knows. I'm not a really good. I mean, obviously, I guess you do have to try and project yourself a little bit, think about what the future is going to look like and prepare yourself for it. On the other hand, we have to also just look in history, right? And a reading of the Quran is going to make you understand that, all the dawah of the prophets always reaches a point where there is not only objection but strong and even violent objection, right? So there's a certain point. The point comes when the powers that be begin to understand that this is something that can actually transform the status quo. When they begin to realize that this message has transformative power, right? When the Quraysh started to realize that this was going to upset the balance of power, that, they were not going to, in their minds, because the irony was Islam wasn't taking anything away from them, right? That's the irony. But in their heads, they were thinking, well, our strength and our power comes from the fact that we have these 360 idols and people come from all over Arabia to worship these idols for Hajj, right? And they were obviously, you can see how ridiculously mistaken they were, because like now people are coming from all over the planet to make Hajj, but in their head, that's it, right? They just saw this as undermining their power and their control and their status quo. And I think some other things, for example, obviously the ones who were attracted to Islam were women. Ironically, women still is women, by the way. Still 70% of converts are women, right? And this is across the board in Africa as well, interestingly enough. The vast majority of converts are women. Same in the West.
According to your statistics from the people that convert with you guys too, huh?
Yeah. So the vast majority are women, right? That was threatening. and slaves as well, because the conversion of slaves again seemed to undermine their whole social in their mind is undermining their social order, right? So I think that the future of Dawah, we hope it's bright, we hope it's good, but history has told us that things reach a certain, they reach a certain level, and then it's always happened that certain powers and certain that those who maintain the status quo, they don't like it. And let's say we live in a world right now that is dominated by a riba-based economic system. If people, on huge numbers of people, start becoming Muslim and refuse to deal in riba, right? How will the banks react? Will they? Because basically, most Islamic banking is barely, it's not really that halal, right?
We gotta make it. We gotta be honest.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you're asking people to move from in their minds, which is in their minds, a risk-free money-making scheme, right? We give you money, and you have to return the money on. There's no risk for that for them, right? There is no risk for them. To a system where you have to share the risk. You support people making business. If they make money, you make money. If they lose, you lose, right? Which is a way better system. I mean, if you think about it, it's a way better system. And if you have a system that actually forces people who have excess money, the only way they can make it is by reinvesting that money into the economy and into people, right? Instead of having massive corporations and organizations who, when they make profits, they just put them in these investments where they're just making money out of other people's money and just exploiting people further, right? They have to reinvest it into communities, into businesses. It's all about growth. Everyone's going to benefit, right? But all they can see is their short-term greed. So I don't know. Well, how's it going to look? What's going to happen? How is the battle going to be, right? If these guys decide they're going to start throwing the weight of their financial institutions and everything that comes with it, by the way. Yeah. So this is something I talked about ages ago, bro. If you heard some of my old school lectures, and I've always inferred this, I said, look, when I talk about the consumer society, basically the Western society is this consumer society. It's all, well, and China as well, right? They're all based on this idea of consumerism that, this, by having things, you're going to be happy, right? Now, I don't even think the Chinese believe that, but they're certainly making lots of money out of making us believe it. Right. But, this whole idea of things, buy things and you'll be happy. But Islam fundamentally is first of all, not even Islam, anyone with a brain who sits down and thinks for 5 minutes is going to figure out that's just nonsense, right? You don't need to be a Muslim to figure it out. But, but Islam definitely teaches that, no, that's not what life is about. Life is not even about this life. The main thing about this life is to make sure you reach paradise in the next, and you're never going to find real joy in this life. It doesn't matter how hard you try. This life is always going to let you down. So it's a whole different philosophy. And someone's going to realize, well, wait a minute. And I think that's why generally you find a lot of the impetus in modern consumer society is against religion. It's anti-religious. And that, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's, traditional Judaism, whether it's, anything that gives people a sort of strong moral basis and an impetus not to simply, to lose themselves in this world, then that becomes an enemy to the system, right? It becomes an enemy to the system. So I think these are the challenges that are going to face us, right? The challenges are when we see some real changes and when we see people really, really becoming Muslim in sizable numbers. It may not happen like that. There may be more subtle forms of coercion, and we've seen Muslims are quite happy to allow themselves to be commercialized and let their religion commercialized, as have Christians. With Christmas always being, we're always complaining here, complaints about, oh, Christmas is just about presents, and it's got nothing to do with Jesus. So who knows what the future holds? But look, at the end of the day, like for us, for you and me, bro, our job, we just have to keep doing our job, and we keep inviting people to Allah. And the beautiful thing is, bro, we have this beautiful book, the Quran,
Alhamdulillah,
which hasn't been changed. It hasn't been corrupted. It's the same book that was there 1,400 years ago. And the beautiful thing is anyone can pick it up. Anyone can read it, right? There's some very, very beautiful things about this religion that makes it both very flexible in some ways, but also very enduring. It seems to, it's been dragged through a lot of stuff and it's still standing, it's still there. So from that perspective, huge positives.
Absolutely. So I kind of want to go over a few of the teaching points for all of those people who, in the comments and who are going to watch that are in Dawah. So tell us a few of the common mistakes that we make in Dawah. What are the ones that, that if you were training somebody, what would be a mistake that you see a lot of early du'at, even seasoned du'at make?
Yeah. Well, if I talk about myself, right, I know my biggest mistake that I constantly make is, and I still struggle with it, is not being a good listener. Yeah. And actually, in some ways, bro, the better you get, the more seasoned you get in giving dawah, the harder it becomes. Because like I would reach a stage where I knew what a person was going to say, like not in some weird sort of psychic sense, right? I could read their mind. It's like I'd had so many conversations with so many people. I just, within a few words, I know what a person's going to say. I know what's going to come out of their mouth, right? I know what arguments they're going to use, right? And like, it's so rare that, bro, it's so rare that there's a new argument. It's so rare that you meet someone who's actually got anything new to say. And so the problem then becomes still being able to listen and just let the person finish what they have to say without interrupting them. And, because people love to be listened to. They do, right? That's the reality. People love to be listened to. And so one of the most important components of being a good da'i is being a good listener. If you're not ready to listen to people, why should anybody listen to you, right? So the better you get, in a sense, the harder it becomes. So I think one of the things we all need to practice is to practice to be good listeners. Even when you know what's being said, still listen. I mean, and listen attentively. Don't just listen like, no, yeah, get on with it. No, but still to be a proper listener, right? To really try and feel where that person's coming from, to empathize with them, to really connect with them. That is really, really important. And
they'll recognize that too, right?
Absolutely, bro. That's the thing, to be genuine, not to do it as an exercise, And I think that's, like a scale, when you've been married a long, long time, it's the same challenge, like, what your wife's going to say, what your husband's going to say, what's coming, like, so for you, you don't want to put your phone down or close your laptop or, just look at that person in the eye and actually give them attention because, I like her. Why? You don't even bother finishing the sentence. I know it. But you know what? Sometimes that person just wants to connect. They want that experience of someone's given me attention and listen to me. And sometimes, this is the weird thing. You see, although our system of giving dawah is very rational, the go-rap system is really rational, a lot of really good dawah is actually just about being a very good, empathetic, and emotionally intelligent human being.
SubhanAllah.
Right? Now, the thing is, you can't teach that. Like, I don't know any course. Like, if someone can develop a course to be like how to be a good, empathetic, emotionally intelligent person, I'm sure there is stuff on emotional intelligence, right? And obviously you know, like Hamza Sources pointed this out, you know, when he was CEO, right? He made this good observation. Is that, look, you're not talking to robots, you know, it's not like you input something into someone's brain and like a logical, you know, computation takes place inside that brain and out comes a logical outcome. That's not what's happening with human beings, right? They're emotional, right? But although our system tries to, you know, it tries, that's why that.
We lost you, Sheikh.
I'm sorry, bro. Someone is trying to ring me, bro, and this person never rings me. And now, like, I'm on this podcast, and this person's trying to ring me, so I don't know what to do. Sort of like, yeah. So, and then for some reason, when they ring, I just go off the screen. So I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, bro. So I think that's the big challenge, bro. Yeah. How about you? What do you think? What do you think's the biggest mistakes in Dawah?
I think a lot of the times is that's you took the words right out of my mouth. For me, that is number one. And actually, one of my teachers, who is a da'i, he's been, I don't know if you're familiar with Sheikh Khalid Amin. He's been giving Dawah in the U.S. for over 50 years. He just came out with a book, Dawah, The Lost Call of the Art of Islam. He used to be in the Nation, and he came to Islam, and you know, he knew Muhammad Ali, and he's been doing street Dawah for like over 50 years, mashallah. And he said that it's not from the Prophet, but it's a statement of, I guess, the Arabs, that wisdom is 9 parts listening, and 1 part not speaking. Like, you know, it's you know, it's a funny thing, but at the end of the day, just you know, being able to be patient and holding yourself back when you want to speak until that right time comes is very important. And I think after that, because I don't want to beat a dead horse, after that, the second biggest problem is people speaking about things because they feel that they're true without knowledge, and then there's auxiliary things that come along with it, like whenever you're called out about it, you know, not just fully owning up and saying, you know, oh yeah, I was wrong. I think a lot of times Muslims want to backtrack and, you know, maybe give excuses. Maybe I've done this too before, but I think saying things without knowledge. Really good, this is what you brought. What's that? When you brought that up earlier about the pork thing, I did a video. It was an experiment because I wanted to see the reaction on my TikTok to see if this would get more views than other ones. And I wanted to just kind of see a few things. I also wanted to see how Muslims would react in the comments. And so I made the video, you know, talking about pork. And then at the very end of the video, and I said, after saying all these things about what pork is, it's nasty, it's this, people say this about pork, blah, blah, blah. At the very end, I said, but we don't eat it because Allah says not to, right? And so I got thousands, maybe 1,000 or so comments on this video, maybe a few hundred at least. I have to go count it. It did really, you know, did really well.
It looked a lot, yeah. Anyway,
and the majority of Muslims in the comments were saying, brother, you don't know, don't say that we do it without wisdom. I never said there is no wisdom. A'udhu billah. None of us would ever say we're in Dawah that Allah doesn't have a wisdom. There is no wisdom. But most of the time, Allah never told us the wisdom. For pork, we were not given a reason, wadih or sarihan, from the Prophet ﷺ or Allah, why pork is haram. Allah never said
all we know is it's najis. That's it.
Najis. Right. It's impure. But so I would see people saying, brother, you know, it's because because they eat their own poop, you know, they sleep in it. Some people one person said that because it's cannibalistic, we're not allowed to eat cannibalistic animals. And I had to facepalm because I'm like, this person doesn't know that chickens, when provoked or in situations where they're extremely hungry, they will eat each other. They're cannibalistic. So therefore, are you going to say that chickens are haram? Like, we have to be careful in just speaking about things without real, you know, deep knowledge. And that's not to say that we shouldn't give dawah, right? I think like everybody we need more people doing dawah, but stick to what you know, right?
I think the other challenge, bro, the other challenge now that we've got going on this, because this is a really interesting discussion, right? And I hope that, you know, you and me can benefit from it and the listeners can as well, right? Back at, you know, in my early days when I used to do a Dawah course, the first Dawah course that I started doing, from which Go Rap sort of developed, but it was a more comprehensive Dawah course. It was like a whole day thing. It was quite comprehensive. And I discussed lots of things to do with Dawah. So it wasn't just Go Rap. I talked about all sorts of different ways of giving Dawah. But I used to have this chart, and one of the things that I would always emphasize is, you should never ever lie about Allah and His Messenger. Right? Never say something about Islam that's a lie, thinking that you're going to, make it easier for a person to become Muslim. Right? And I think, to be honest, especially in the West, but I'm sure it's true in India and many, many other places, the temptation to lie about Islam, the temptation to lie about women in Islam, the temptation to lie about, sexual behaviors, the temptation to lie about, say, the topic of jihad or anything. There could be anything, like there could be stuff that, we, in the West, people would say easily, right? Or polygamy, right? I mean, whatever it may be, some of these things we know, right? And there may be other places that we'd easily talk about it, but they wouldn't. Yeah. So to lie about Islam, to lie about Allah, to lie about the religion in order to try and make it more compatible, right? This is a very, very, very big problem. And it's a big problem from two things. Like, personally, when you lie about Allah and His Messenger, that is amongst the greatest sins that you can ever commit. Like, it's a hugely terrible thing, right? However noble your intentions are, right? Yeah, you want to give dawah, you want the person to become Muslim, but Allah did not make it your job to make anyone Muslim. He didn't, right? You don't need to make anyone Muslim. You need to pass on the message. Allah's going to guide who He wants to guide. Your job is to pass the message, and you don't even know that the very thing that you're lying about may be the thing that person is actually going to convert them to Islam. You don't even know that, because I know stories that's happened. I know stories where people became Muslim because of the strangest things, the very things that some people are trying to lie about. Oh, Islam doesn't have this and doesn't have that. That's the reason they became Muslim, right? So this is a big problem, bro. This is a really big problem. That's not even hidden in the US, bro, right?
No,
the extent to which people are literally lying about Allah and lying about the deen. And I'm sure their intentions are good, right? Maybe
Absolutely.
some of them genuinely don't even know, because they themselves have been so confused, right? So I think that's one of the big challenges, bro, and I think the other point is that when people become Muslim and then they find out that they've been lied to, that's really problematic. I mean, people will not only apostatize from Islam, yeah, but they will become really strong opponents, because people don't like it when they've been lied to and when they've been deceived, right? In fact, bro, I think a lot of people become Muslim when they realize that they've been lied to about, the West and all the, like, I know a lot of people, right? When you realize how your society, how the media has lied to you, how your governments have lied to you, how your politicians have lied to you, how your teachers have lied to you, when you wake up to that and you realize how you've been lied to, that is why a lot of people come into Islam so strong, right? Because
100%.
They just do that complete flip. So we don't want to do the same thing. Right? We don't want to make the same mistake, right?
And so,
this is where a lot of, this is where the church, in a lot of instances, bro, has just gone wrong. Like, again, that gentleman we know who's become Muslim, right? That's what he was complaining about, right? Is that Christianity doesn't mean anything anymore. I remember when I was a kid, they were turning the churches into discos to get the kids, just so the kids could come to church.
SubhanAllah. And bingo halls.
Bro, you say SubhanAllah, bro, but aren't we doing the same things? Aren't we Muslims going down that same?
It's going to happen if we do not learn from what's happening around us. And do you think the reason is, because I want to get down to, I mean, I don't know how much time you have left. I have a few questions, and we have questions and answers from our chat. But would you say that the underlying issue for people wanting to feel the need to even hide a few things, or say, oh no, there's no such thing as, like you said, jihad in Islam, or oh, Aisha, she was, maybe there's an opinion, but maybe they believe that she was 9, but they say, oh, she was 19, she was 20. For any issue, do you think that the underlying issue is that they don't have self-confidence, Or is it they actually are ashamed of part of the religion?
No, I think it doesn't have to be either of those two things,
Okay.
right? It's
What do
that
you think
you know that, like, there's some things, bro. Look, I'd say, and this is why we go back to the go rap method, right? This is why don't waste your time trying to convince people, right? Like, let's take the the most strongly established opinion throughout Islamic history on apostasy within an Islamic system. Yeah. Okay, so without I'm qualifying it, right? So this is just not my opinion. I'm just saying, traditionally in Islamic history, right, that if someone in an Islamic state apostatize, is a Muslim, and they leave Islam, then the traditional, what the jurists have traditionally said is that, and this is the strongest, most established opinion. There are very small opinions here and there otherwise, but it's like, this is the main opinion, is that it's a capital punishment, right? Now, listen, you can say whatever rationalizations you like, but to almost everybody in the West, right, that is just never going to sound good. It's never going to make sense. And the reason I think is because, we live in a society where, people change their religion like they change their breakfast cereal, right? Like, people experiment with religions. People, like, they don't even take religion seriously. So the idea that, a person might die, right? Oh, and you can say, yeah, but, we have to understand Islam is the whole system. It's like treason. It's like that. But in their mind, it's never going to quite connect. Right.
Because they don't.
So this
They
is
don't
the
see it
thing,
that
is
way.
that, yeah. So you may go down the line of saying, yeah, but it's just an opinion, and la ikraha fi din. There's no compulsion in religion, whatever, right? Okay, so you wouldn't strictly. Let's say you're not strictly lying. Maybe you just chosen something, whatever. But the point is, it's not because I am embarrassed, right? It's not because I'm weak. It's not because whatever, right? It's because I know this person is just never going to be able to compute that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm stuck. I'm stuck against this barrier that I want them to know about Islam. I want them to know about Allah. I want them to know what a beautiful way of life this is. And it's not like what you think it is. So what I do is I say, okay, put that aside. So what I say is, instead of, you can't put it aside except by denying it. Yeah. Oh, no. That's just, whatever. Let's say whatever it is. Yeah. It's just culture. It's just whatever. It's just a misinterpretation. I don't know, whatever. Right. I think so. It's not necessarily because people are embarrassed or because they are weak in their faith, or because, no, it's because they genuinely have a desire to want to win that person over, right? So there's two mistakes, right? Number one, it's not your duty to win them over, right? You have to remind yourself of that. It's not about you winning an argument or, capturing, it's not like when you give dawah, you can put little, like those airplane World War I pilots, World War II pilots, every time they shoot someone down, they put a little, like, oh, how many converts have I got? Like, that's not what it's about, right? Yeah. Your job is just to explain them, but I get it, right? So it's not like, it doesn't necessarily come from a bad place, right? But you can avoid all of that. You can avoid it all by just going back to the go rap method. Go back to God's existence. Go to God's oneness. Go to revelation and prophethood. Go back to the basics. Get them to understand what is the foundation of all of this. Avoid that whole discussion,
And I'll
because
ask
it's
a person
irrelevant.
who's an atheist. Like they'll ask that question. Oh, what about apostasy? And I will immediately. I don't answer. I say, do you even believe there's a God? And they'll say no. I said, then what does this matter to you?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? If it is or is it not? What's the effect on you? Let's get to prove to you there's even a creator, because nothing's going to happen to you as an atheist. Okay, you don't have anything to worry about. Let's actually see if there's a creator. And that's how I see it. And I think that's a very good point that you brought up, mashallah. So we're going to go into the questions from the audience. We've got not too many, alhamdulillah. And also, wa alaikum salam to everybody who said salam alaikum. We really appreciate it. And for those who are wondering, no, we're not bringing anybody else up on the stream. This is not an open podcast. We're just going to be doing questions for the sheikh, and then we'll let him go because he's a very busy man. Allahumma barak. So the question is, how do we arrive to Allah, or as Allah is the true creator, after we establish the existence of God with an atheist?
Basically, the basic argument for me, the best argument is the argument by design, right? you know, I like the terminology. How do we arrive to Allah as the true creator, right? So one of the things I mean, personally, one of the things that I emphasize in my Dawah training is don't feel you have to prove anything, because, you know, when you say proof, you've set yourself maybe what you could call as an impossible standard that you're going to meet, right? And part of the problem is reason has its limits. Okay, so like ultimately, I believe the strongest proof, you know, of Islam and the truth of Islam is when you live it. You actually experience it and you live it. So like you can't do that. What you can do is you can show that this is the most reasonable, most rational option, right? And it's very simple. The argument from design is very simple, is that we live in a very complex universe. It's clearly working according to incredible complex laws. I was actually listening to something. I came across this TikTok video, you know, today, and incredible what it, you know, that I think was this number 108, 108. The width of the moon is, or the proportion of the width of the moon to the Earth is 108, and 108, and the proportion of the Earth to the sun is 108. Literally, the moon, the sun, and the Earth have that same proportion. And in fact, if the moon was, you know, like the proportion was different, life would be considerably different, if there would be any life at all. So this is the point. It was like incredible, the precision, like the incredible precision that we find in this universe that allows life to exist, from the very, very basic founding forces: gravity, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, right, the electromagnetic field, all the way that all of these forces and fields are at such a precise level that if they were different by even the smallest, tiniest amount, life would not exist. Like, so, like our universal experience as human beings is when we see something that has been built according to such laws and patterns, we know that something must have made those laws and patterns through which and by which it exists. You see a mobile phone in the desert, you don't think it just was a product of the wind blowing, the sand, you know, melting, you know, the lightning striking, the camel treading for billions of years, and the mobile phone formed itself by random events.
Absolutely.
You know that someone's built it, something's built it. So the same with the universe. We look at our world, and that's why Allah is always telling us, right? Look to this, look to that, look at the winds, look at the trees, look at the stars, look at the, you know, look at all the creation. All of these are signs. They are all signs that point us to understand that not only is there a creator, but this creator must be one, and this creator must be unique. It could only be one being that is putting all of this together. Right. So that's a very, very simple, you know, it is very simple, but to me, it's the most effective argument. And a person has to make a choice. You really think that all of this is some random events, you know? And obviously there's more things, you know, people say, well, you know, if everything needs a creator, who created the creator? But, you know, well, God was always there. Something that's always there doesn't need a creator. The universe has not always been there. It had a beginning. The universe had a beginning, and like this is pretty much the consensus as well of scientists. Like the universe had a beginning and it's going to end, right? And even if the universe was eternal, we could say it's eternal. It's still contingent. It still doesn't have the ability to organize and create itself and bring itself into existence and create this precision, this amount of precision of organization. Whereas Allah is eternal. He's not, he's, you know, he's without beginning, without end. So to ask a question like who created God is a meaningless question. It doesn't mean anything, you know, because God, something that has no beginning and no end, something that is eternal and self-sufficient, has no need to be brought into existence. And so that's really very, very simply how we can know that there is one God. It's, you know, that's a very, very, you know, condensed, quick version, but
absolutely. Hopefully that's
all you need, really.
Yeah, mashallah. We've got Joy, one of our moderators. Walaikum salam, Joy, mashallah. Good to have you. I hope you're feeling better. Question 2 at the Muslim Cowboy: how people with different IQ, intelligence quotient, and emotional quotient are expected to understand such perfect and complex concepts as religion? Most people still don't know their own capital, sadly. That's a good question. But the easiest answer, I guess she was asking me. I don't know. If you want to answer it, go ahead. But
yeah, go ahead, bro.
Okay. The main thing is that Islam, you're right. Some religions, especially like, for example, the doctrine of the Trinity, you can take the most intelligent people on the earth and they will never understand what it means. I was actually speaking to a Christian today, and it was Tertullian in one of his books, one of the church fathers. He said that the doctrine of the Trinity, its intention is to confuse. This is his words. He said the intention of the doctrine of the Trinity is meant to confuse. And another one of the church fathers, I believe it was either Jerome or Saint Thomas Aquinas, said that the more I think about the Trinity, the more I misunderstand it, or the less I understand it. Yeah. And so you're right that, okay, in some religions, you think, how can people understand it or whatever, because it's so complex and, you have to do all this gymnastics. But what's amazing about Islam is that it's different than all of these things. You can be the smartest person in the world and completely understand Islam. It's very simple. And you can be somebody who's not intelligent. We're not saying someone who's Majnoon, who's lost their marbles completely, but you can be someone who is very, at the bottom end of the spectrum, Allah bless them all, and still be able to understand that, look, there's only one God, worship him alone, don't associate partners with that God in worship, and to obey the commandments that he sends down. That's Islam. It's very easy. It's very simple. And this is something that it doesn't take much of an emotional IQ or intelligence IQ to accept these things. Wallahu alam. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, bro. I mean, I think the thing is, again, like the difference between the human's ability to reason and understand is pretty marginal, right? Now, I know that someone may say, oh, look, there's a vast difference between, Einstein, Elon Musk, or, whatever other genius you want to mention, right? And in different ways, or, and like, I don't know, whoever, some guy down the street, blah, blah, blah. But, that's only relative. In reality, the difference is not that much. The human brain is the human brain, right? The human brain is an incredibly complex, amazing mechanism, whatever brain you've got, right? I mean, you just may not be used to exercising. It's the same thing, like a person, like you could have someone who's fat and obese and can't move 3 inches, right? And you can have this, I don't know what's the name of that, that ex-Marine guy who just runs hundreds of miles and doesn't drink and doesn't eat. And,
oh yeah, I know. I don't know his name, but
yeah, this, like, whatever, right? But he himself, even that guy will admit, like, it's just a lot of it is in the head, right? Like, you can do it. Anyone can do it, right? You can. If you apply yourself, you can do it. So the thing is that this idea that, you need to be, like, first of all, I am not a really big believer that there is that much difference between human beings, right? We are actually pretty much so much the same. And our capabilities are exaggerated. This idea of the Superman. No, I'm not a believer in talent. I believe talent is just literally how you've applied yourself, right? And yes, there are a few things. Like if you're very tall, you're going to be, it's going to be easier for you to be good at basketball. That's just sure, right? There are some things like that, right? But when it comes to Islam, when it comes to understanding the truth, like, these are very simple things. It is not complicated. Like, this is the problem. This is the problem with philosophizing religion and turning it into some complex theology. It is not complicated. It is the easiest thing to understand. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. It is extremely easy to understand. A kid can understand it, right? And in fact, there was a study in Oxford University. They said that believing in God and believing in one creator that is a being that is unique and different from the creation is actually normal. Like, this is what children normally believe. Like, they naturally believe it. You don't even need to apply thinking to it. It's just so natural, right? Because children spot straight away. They don't believe something can come out of nothing. They know straight away when they see, a magic trick and something comes out of nothing. They know it's not right. They know it's not normal, right? They know there is order, and they know that things that are built have builders. kids click onto this very, very quickly. This is not intelligence, guys. This is just simple, and that's the beautiful thing. Similarly, the Quran, very simple. Looking at the life of the Prophet, when you look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you read about his life, it is not difficult to conclude that he must have been a prophet of God. He was not a liar. He did not invent this religion. He did not go around deceiving people, and that he was clearly very honest and very sincere. He did not have the characteristics of a liar. He was not a deceiver. Yet at the same time, he brings a book with such level of knowledge and understanding of so many different aspects of human behavior and history and theology and legal. Like, where did he get this knowledge from? Where did he get this information from? The explanation is quite simple. It's from God. He was truthful and honest and sincere because he was what he claimed to be. And all of that knowledge that it's so hard to explain how an illiterate man who couldn't read and write, who lived in the desert 1,400 years ago, how did he know all of this stuff? Well, because God told him. It's not simple. It's not difficult to conclude that stuff. You don't need some, you don't need some PhD. You don't need to be super smart.
MashaAllah.
I mean, look at you, bro, and look at me.
Yeah.
We're not like Einsteins or anything, but alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I don't know how it happened. Yeah, I definitely don't give any credit to myself. So
alhamdulillah, bro. It's all from Allah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Al Neo, Assalamu alaikum, bro. Good to see you back at the Muslim Cowboy. What's the best approach to give dawah or advice to teens that are influenced by so many ideologies, especially in the West? I'm going to give this one over to Sheikh Abdur Raheem Green.
Oh, well, okay. So I'll give a go and then you give me a, because I'm interested to see what you're going to say. Okay. I think, again, I think one of the things we need to do is we just need to root our own children very, very strongly in our, I guess you could say our folklore. Right. So, when I say folklore, I don't mean like it's a fiction, right? But they need to know our stories, the stories of our prophets, right? The story of our scholars, the stories of our scholars, the stories of the companions, the stories of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They need to live the culture of what is really Islam, and they need to see it working. So as a parent, especially as a parent, right? It is crazy for you to think that your kids are going to live Islam when you yourself are not living Islam, right? Your kids need to see Islam working in your life. They need to see you as a Muslim living in the West and thriving and succeeding. And in some ways, that's all they need, right? If they can see that, that's all the evidence they need. They can see, well, it can be done. It's not an impossibility, right? And also just to go over the sort of things that we're going over, right? How do we know there's a God? How do we know the Quran is from God? Don't just take it for granted that because they're Muslim, they're going to know this stuff, right? Unless you sit down and you give them some idea. Like my kids, they've been through all my courses. I sit down with them and I do my courses with my kids, right? The first people I gave dawah training to was my kids and my family before I did it to anyone else. They were the first ones, right? And they were the first ones joining me on dawah trips and this and that before I invited anyone else, right? So, this is what you need to do. You need to bring your kids up in that culture. Like the culture you give them, the culture you provide for them, that's how they're going to be. That's what I've got to say. So,
okay. So El Neo, so that's amazing. I think though, if El Neo, if you're mentioning to like people who aren't in your family, because I think maybe because if you're asking me how do I give dawah to people back home, I want to give you a little bit of a background from a story that I have before I came to Medina. And there was this Palestinian brother, Allah, mashallah, may Allah bless him, who before I met him, he, wasn't really that practicing, right? And even but I didn't know it at first. I'm a convert myself. So at this time, maybe I was in Islam for like 4 years, right? So I don't know that much, and I don't know that Muslims are at different levels. I think that I'm going to meet a Muslim, everyone's going to be, mashallah, as serious as the next one. I have a very high, even if they're young. Like I'm thinking that this brother, he was 16 years old enough to to work, And he ended up, like, I met him somewhere and he wanted to work for me because I had a fence company. And I said, okay, you know, how old are you? And he was old enough. And so I said, okay, you can come work for me. And long story short, he ends up always asking me questions, you know, like, hey, is it permissible to have boyfriends and girlfriends in Islam? And I would ask him, did your parents ever teach you about this? He's like, you know, no, not really. You know, his dad's always doing this, and I don't know why. But yeah, he always asked questions that just seemed to be so rudimentary and fundamentally known. But I was like, you don't know this. Like, and he's like, is it okay for us to be friends with people who are homosexual and this and that? I'm like, you can be nice to anybody. And I would tell him, right, all of the answers that you and me would go about. But what I ended up noticing, that the reason why he even took my opinions or even kind of valued anything that I had to say was, one, that I was really relatable to him, right? I wasn't like this amu, you know, this uncle that was just getting on to him. I was cool. We were kicking it. He worked for me, but we were like, I was being good with friends. And he even mentioned this. So the biggest thing I can say, first of all, if you want to reach these youth, especially the ones who are really being inundated in public schools and in other places with these ideologies that you're talking about, you have to first be relatable to them. Don't put yourself in this position where they see you as someone who they can't attain that. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't send angels to give the message to humans. He gave humans the message to give humans so that we could, you know, kind of relate to them. So make yourself relatable and kind of, you know, not like, you don't have to, like what we say, kick it and, you know, like wear their clothes and stuff, but kind of, you know, be cool. Like, not, you know, you don't have to do jahil things and haram things, but be cool, be something that, and be manly, right? If you're a man, be manly. If you're a woman, be feminine. Because the natural state of people, even if they're affected by the LGBT ideology, this is why we see this person who just converted recently, he has such an influence on young Muslim males from the age of 12, you know, to the early 20s. Why? Because the natural fitrah of males who are coming and emerging into puberty and stuff, they naturally want to act like men, right? This is just how Allah created us. And so when you have a good manly figure, when you're a very strong man, they're going to resonate with that and say, man, this guy, he's got it going on. He's successful, he's tough, but he's also kind when he needs to be. You know, we have izzah. So have honor and dignity and have the character of a Muslim, you know, because the Sahaba and the Tabi'een would always tell us, right? What did they pass down? They said that we would sit, and the four imams, that they said that we would learn from a person's adab, right? Their adab and their akhlaq, their characteristics and their manners, before we learn from their ilm, right? And learning from manners is a type of ilm. So having really good character, practicing what you preach, is very important. And another thing I noticed is that when they asked about the girlfriends, they were like, well, you know, amongst Palestinians, I'm not saying about all Palestinians, they don't all do this, but at least for him in this area back in Texas, all of the cousins, the boys and the girls, they're all hanging out with each other without hijab and everything, you know, high fives, hugs, and this, thinking that, oh, because they're cousins, it's not off limits. So this makes it more acceptable because they know that they can marry these cousins also later. So if you're doing all these cultural things, making it okay for things that are haram to be so normalized, then yeah, your children, your grandchildren are going to fall into boyfriend-girlfriend relationships because these things have been so normalized. So make sure that you are, you know, watching what you're doing, practicing what you preach, and try to resonate with these people and show them how beautiful it is and how, like, look, I practice Islam, I pray. And that was another thing. And I'll make this the last part. You know, a lot of people are really afraid to pray in public. So say you have a job like me where I would build fences. And so I'm outside all the time. I would never be afraid to just like, oh, hey, we got to stop. We got to pray. There's no masjid nearby. And we've got to hurry up and go get these materials and get to the job site. Let's pray at this Quick Trip right out, this gas station. There's a piece of grass. Let's pray in front of all these people. And I don't show that I'm scared or have any problems. The Muslims are going to see this and they're going to say, man, this he's got some cojones, you know. But I don't think that there's going to be anything that's going to happen because just the statistics are not there. But obviously something could. But in the minds of Muslims, they've been so, you know, in the West, they've been so conditioned to be so afraid that when they see you being strong in just little things like this, they'll recognize that, this guy he's got something, or this lady, you know, that you're not afraid to do what it takes to put the sunnah up and to follow Islam to the best of your ability. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
MashaAllah. Nice, bro.
let's look next. Okay. Oh, Joy, mashallah, you really wanted that, sister. You wanted that question answered. Alhamdulillah, I hope we answered it good for you. Okay, that's the same one as well. MashaAllah. So many salam alaikums. I love you guys. MashaAllah. I'm trying to get to the questions. Just a few more. Okay, that's the same one again. Here we go. Oh, that's the same one again. I didn't even read it. Okay. He asked it to you, but you answered it first. MashaAllah. Ameen. May Allah also reward all of you guys. Welcome back, Krish. MashaAllah. It's good to see you. Krish, are you ready to become a Muslim? If you are, we're more than happy to let you up. Let me know if you're ready to become a Muslim on the panel. I think this would be good. And this is one of the best people to do it in front of, mashallah. Let me know right now. Okay, I didn't see any more questions. But Krish is a mashallah, he's looking into Islam. He really likes a lot about Islam. He agrees with everything. He's just not ready to take his shahada. He says, not yet. Ha ha ha. Okay. What advice? Okay, so Krish, if you have the chance, go check out Abdur Raheem Green stuff, and whatnot. But, Sheikh, what would you give advice to someone who agrees with everything in Islam, but he's hesitating on accepting it?
I think, one thing that we Muslims are encouraged to think about a lot, and that is death. It's amazing when you go back and you actually study how the people who were with the Prophet Muhammad, his companions, right? So the Prophet Muhammad had with him these people. They learned from him, they followed him. We call them the companions, the companions of the Prophet. We look at the vocabulary, the way they used to talk to each other. There's one amazing incident where this is after the death of the Prophet. There's one companion, he's in the mosque, and he finds this group of people, right, doing something. He thinks it's a bit weird. He doesn't want to say anything himself. He doesn't feel confident. So he goes to this house of this more senior companion of the Prophet, and he wants his advice. He doesn't want to say anything without checking out with the more knowledgeable one, right? So he waits outside his door until he comes out to go and pray. He says, he says, what's going on? What's happening? Right, Assalamu alaikum, what's happening? He said, look, Abu Abdur Rahman, I saw something in the masjid, in the mosque. Like, it looks good, but I don't feel comfortable about it. It has something that it doesn't seem right to me, He said, and if you live, you will see it. Like, he's just going to go from his house to the mosque, right? He's come out of his mosque and he's going to go from his house to the mosque. It's going to be a 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk. But he says to him, if you live, you will see it. And that's how they used to think about how short their life could be, how quickly death could come to them. Like, if you live, and he's in that statement, he's just showing that's their mindset, right? But how they're also reminding each other as well. So that is something, we tend to have this thing is that, maybe like a chicken in the farm, right? The farmer's been feeding me every day, right? He's going to keep feeding me every day. Well, one day the farmer's going to come and you're going to be roast chicken, right? We have this thing, I'm going to keep, even me, right? Right, isn't it, bro? We keep thinking, tomorrow, next week, we'll have this podcast, this and that. We arrange this well in advance because we do. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But in the sense that you want to make plans. But really, sometimes we forget. You're
so right, subhanAllah. You're getting that phone call again, I see.
Guy phoning me, I don't believe it. So death can come to us anytime. So, Krish, I would say to you, don't keep thinking you've got time. You don't know when your time is up. And you don't want it to be that the only thing between you and being in paradise forever was confessing openly to something you already believe anyway. Like, I can understand if you're really not convinced, right? That's fine. We have the conversation. What else is it you want to need to know, right? But if you know it and you believe it, why would you just not start, accept it, take the first steps? You know, no one's going to become an amazing Muslim like on day one. Your sins will be forgiven, but you know. So anyway, bro, that's my advice to you. You know, like, obviously, you know, it's not my job to, you know, we're just here to invite you, but you know, don't keep delaying, bro, because you know, if you know, it's just a good habit as well, even as a Muslim, right, bro? It's a good habit. When you know something, you should act on it. That's part of what a good habit we should have as a Muslim. You know, when you really know, okay, that's what Islam teaches me, like, act on it. Don't take time to implement what you really know in your heart is to be true, because that's just not a good way to discipline yourself either, right? Anyway, bro, that's my advice to Krish. Yeah.
Jazakallah khairan. Yeah, Chris,
Barakallah.
hopefully you internalize this. Yeah, mashallah, it's a very amazing religion. It's the only religion from God. So, alhamdulillah, you know, hope you.
Only one that's left. Yeah.
Only one that's left. Just rise and grind at the Muslim Cowboy.
Yeah.
We're going to take two more. This one and then the last one from Krish is, if someone is not good at giving dawah face to face with people, is there other ways to give dawah? Absolutely. There's online dawah. I mean, you can, like, I have the link posted right now. If you want
just
to go
post leaflets through people's doors, right?
Yeah.
You know, post booklets. There's so much you can do. Yeah.
There's a guy who he created a Facebook account, okay, and with a a pin name, right, and not his name, but like, you know, like it was like his kunya, like Abu something, whatever. So, but it wasn't his, you know, his real name. If you're worried about your real name, whatever. And he goes to different Christian groups on Facebook, joins those groups, and then posts like Islamic links and stuff. And then like he's like, if you want to know more, message me. Obviously, sometimes he'll get kicked out of the group or whatever. But then he goes to another group and then does it. And then he's getting people messaging him like, hey, I would like to learn more. And then he gets like, just be creative. Be creative. And even if you're not good at even speaking, you don't want to put your face out there, you don't want to do TikTok and all this stuff, there's so many things you can do. Like he said, put leaflets out there, finish the MOPA and join our team. You can be someone who writes articles. You can be somebody who does script writing for people who are looking to make, you know, professional videos. As long as you just have the intention for spreading this deen, you can be in any support position if you're not good at doing face-to-face. And ask people who are knowledgeable around you, people who have been in the dawah like us, alhamdulillah, and meet with other people who you know, and maybe there might be a position that you can fill that will really fulfill you as well.
Alhamdulillah.
And Krish, mashallah, last question. And as far as Sentinel Apologetics, who asked the question earlier, I'm not going to post it up on the screen. He said, what happened to our conversation? You said you had to leave the other day, and the podcast went for 3.5 hours or 4 hours, so I had to turn it off. But if you ever want to come back, inshallah, we'll love to have you on. Chris is asking, what's your take on Paul in the Bible? Okay, I'll give you my take on Paul in the Bible. I really like to take Abdur Raheem Green's approach. Ever since I've done my training, I've really liked this approach. Sometimes I will, if someone's forcing Bible in my face and they want to talk about it, then I'll talk about it. But I won't ever use it to support my positions. I'll only use it to show the problems with it. So, for example, if you want to know about Paul in the Bible, okay, I'm going to take us to 1 Corinthians 9:19 through 23. And let me see if I can get it up here. Okay. All right. And so it's across the bottom for those who want to see it. So Paul says, though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I become like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I become like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I become weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I might share with them its blessings. And that's 1 Corinthians 9:19 through 23. Now, for any Christians who might reply to this and say, well, you don't understand what this means. This isn't deception like it seems like. Well, if I want to go to what the early church fathers say and what other Christian scholars say. So if we look at Loyal D. Rue, who is a professor of religion and philosophy at Luther College, which I almost went to that college after high school on football partial scholarship, but I did end up going to A&M. He said that in the Christian tradition, there is very early precedent for the use of deceptive means for evangelistic purposes. St. Paul himself makes a remarkable admission of his chameleon-like behavior in the winning of converts. And then they quote the quote that I just quoted. Also, if we go to James Prince, who is a very famous Christian author, he says that Paul is very well known for his use of deception. Even in his story of seeing Jesus on the road to Damascus, both of his stories are completely different. The way that he relates them are different in their order. They don't really match up. So we know that the story that Paul had with his vision that he had didn't even match up. He wasn't honest about that. And then you have early church fathers, okay? For example, like Clement of Alexandria. He points out, and this was noted by Professor Brian T. Mooney, who he's a very famous Christian professor, right? He said that Clement of Alexandria, while praising the Christian who would never lie, even in the face of torture or death, makes an exception for therapeutic lies, alluding to St. Paul's dissimulation of Acts 16:3 and 1 Corinthians 19:20-23 for the sake of evangelism, right? So you can't lie in anything, but for the purpose of calling people to Christianity, you can lie. And this is why, because of Paul's doctrine, you see hundreds of people pretending to be Jews, and some they don't do it as much for Muslims, because Muslims, I think, are a little bit smarter about telling who's like pretending or not. But a lot of Christians pretend to be Jews and rabbis in Jerusalem. And I think of a famous YouTuber, Jewish rabbi, he's actually doing work to like expose all of these people who are Christian missionaries pretending to be Jews, following out, and they cite Paul himself for pretending to be like others. It's okay as long as your end goal is to get people to be like you. So my opinion on Paul in the Bible is that Paul is someone that can't be trusted. You can't trust anything that he says, because a person that in the beginning admits to lying, how am I supposed to take anything else that he says after that? And sorry if that's a little long, but that's the breakdown.
But it sounds like Paul is doing exactly what, remember we had this thing, what Muslims need to be careful about when they're giving dawah. And we mentioned changing the religion in order to make it fit, out of you're wanting people to become Muslim, right? It sounds like that's exactly what Paul was doing. Paul wanted to bring people to Jesus to accept him as the Messiah, and he was just ready to say anything that he thought would make them accept that. So yeah, to say it's very dangerous, right? Route to go down. You can justify a lot of stuff. It's very interesting. I've been reading a bit of stuff about like ancient religions that were around, before Christianity came in England and stuff. And it's a whole connection with Gog and Magog, Juju and Majuj, which is very interesting because it might actually be an ancient religion. But anyway, that's a whole subject. But the thing is that human sacrifice was really, really common, right? It was like really common all over Northern Europe. Even in the Roman Empire, it was still practiced. It wasn't that common because they frowned upon it. It was very, very common amongst paganism until Christianity came along with this idea that you don't need a sacrifice anymore because Jesus has been sacrificed, right? So it had this effect of actually sort of nullifying the need for a human sacrifice because that sacrifice had already taken place, which is quite interesting, right? And obviously I'm just saying in the sense that how that was used in order to push, this idea of Christianity through, right? So it's very, very interesting. And it's a good analysis as well, bro. We got all the quotes there, man.
Yeah, well, Paul's a serious topic, right? And if you can really start
Yeah, I mean,
dismantling Paul, I think for a lot of Christians, then you can start making inroads. But even then, I still don't bring it. I still try to focus on the go rap. But if someone wants to ask about it, I'm more than happy to bring it up because I want to show them that, look, if you, especially when people have the preponderance and this knack for coming after Muslims and saying taqiyya, you guys lie, you can't trust Muslims and all this stuff. It's like, okay, first of all, did you not know that lying is one of the kaba'ir, false witness, and bearing all of this? It's a huge thing. Lying is not good in any situation except in certain circumstances. Like if you're going to save someone's life who's innocent, what I'm saying? Like all these kind of things that are rare exceptions, lying is not good, and not for the sake of dawah. We don't have this idea of if someone's going to end up coming to the truth, then it's okay to lie, because logically, as Sheikh Abdur Raheem Green mentioned, it's going to have negative effects, because if someone came through a lie and they realize that it was a lie, they will start to doubt everything else, and this will have a cascading effect on their lives. And so this is why it's very important to point this out. I believe. Now, before we go, I want to ask you, Sheikh Abdur Raheem, what are the top 3 tips? Something so everyone can go away with just a little bit. If you guys didn't remember a single thing we said with our short attention spans, what are 3 tips that you would say that we should utilize in every conversation we have with non-Muslims?
Well, number 1 is be a good listener, be a good, sincere listener, really listen and try to understand what the person is saying and where they're coming from, and try not to interrupt. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is don't lie about Islam. It doesn't mean you have to say everything, right? And introduce confusing subjects that people get confused about. But, you don't need to lie about what Islam says. And thirdly, don't speak about Allah and his religion without knowledge. Don't speak about the religion without knowledge. If you don't know, you can say, I don't know. You can always go back and find out. And it's, in fact, a great way to, exchange details with people and get back in touch with them. So it's okay to say I don't know, and don't speak about the religion without knowledge. So there's 3 things.
MashaAllah. That's beautiful. Those are wonderful, mashallah. So hopefully everybody can take away something. And I do want to bring this comment up. Someone just joined us last minute. Slowpoke. I guess you get that.
John, I was just talking about that the other day to someone, bro. Just laughing about that. I don't think the brother found it very funny, actually, for some reason. That's the whole point, bro. I knew, you and me knew that some people would not get it. So it's a private joke between me and John Fontaine. Do you in on this joke, bro? Do you know what it's
I'm not.
about?
I'm laughing because I want to know, and I can see your reaction. As soon as I put it up, I was like, I know something's going on here.
We'll share it. John will share it with you. I'm sure he'll, let you in on the joke. But the rest of you guys, it's like, it's a joke.
Yom Qiyamah, you'll find out, inshallah.
Allah, no, I don't think so. So inshallah.
Not even then.
Not even then. You don't need to. All right, bro. I think it's Maghrib time now, bro. I'm gonna have to go and pray.
Yeah, I want to let you go. Those were the last 3 tips. Anything else you have good to say before we go, or just peace out?
No, that's it, bro. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been my honor. No, mashallah.
My pleasure, bro.
Don't forget, everybody, all the Muslims and us in your du'as, and inshallah, if you come to Medina, a lot of people coming right now. If you come, I'm more than happy to host you, take care of you, drive you around, whatever you do. And if you got a group, I know Hijab and Zorchis is coming this month. Yeah, tell Hijab he needs to get back to me. I've been trying to get a hold of him and I'm having a hard time. So
inshallah, bro.
And stay for a little bit after we close up. I got a few housekeeping items, but inshallah, it was a pleasure. It's my pleasure, mashallah.
Okay, bro.
All right, everybody. I want to first thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing me to come on again today, hopefully to spread a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of light, a little bit of wisdom on dawah, what our role is, and to bring someone from the greatest of the people who are really giving a lot of their life towards this end. Mashallah, it was something beautiful. I hope that we all could have been blessed to benefit from it a little bit. Also, guys, if you can go and check out all of his stuff, go to IERA, take their training courses, go to our training courses that we have at the MOPA Academy. The link is right here on the screen again. go ahead and sign up. I don't know if y'all want it to, let me see if I can put it in the chat. There you go. It's in the chat. Right now, this is a limited time only Dawah opportunity. Usually it takes like a whole month to 4 months to finish the Dawah training. We're doing an intensive right now for people who are going through it to finish in less than in 2 weeks, I believe. And so, go ahead and get it. For all those non-Muslims who have yet to read the Quran, I've got to get the door. So it looks like someone forgot their key. Go to www.get-quran.com. Please support the effort that we're doing. Alhamdulillah, people are coming through Islam every single day through our organizations, through our efforts. And if you want to get the reward of that, spread this message, spread the Qur'ans, spread all of it. And inshallah, it will help. Anything I said that was good was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything I said that was bad is from myself. I ask Allah to forgive us for any of our shortcomings and to bring us to a greater and more blessed gathering. Inshallah, may we drink from the hawd, from the hands of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the day of judgment. And may he be pleased with us and we all entered paradise. And if I don't meet you in this life, as always, guys, and inshallah, if we meet there, then we'll have a big old barbecue and party at my house, and you're all invited. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.